Glad you're with us this afternoon here on the Law and Crime Network. Aaron Keller along with Norman Williams, Mike Korobanix. Roger Foley will be joining us from West Palm Beach, Florida in just a moment. We are following 3 cases here on the Law and Crime Network. Let's bring the panel in after that very, very brief direct examination. Obviously, the cross was way longer. Roger Foley, an attorney in West Palm Beach, Florida, joining us here on the Law and Crime Network. He's here along with Mike Korobanix and Norman Williams in our studios in New York. Roger, let me start with you. What is going through this guy's mind?
I don't know, Aaron. He's just not there. I would describe him as a psychopath, someone with just pure evil intentions. He's trying to tell the folks that he had no intentions of killing her. It just doesn't make sense. Everything he's just said, he's been accused, but he has told everybody, I killed this woman, and for no reason, for $300.
Okay, Norman Williams, Mike Korobanix here. This really short direct examination, Norman, why so short? Is this one of these situations where the client demands, I'm going to get up there and I'm going to spin this yarn, and the attorney is not really comfortable with what's about to happen?
I'd say so. And the one good thing that you have as the attorney is that you can kind of control the examination. You can make it shorter and just hope he gets off the stand and cross doesn't destroy him, which...
Mike Korobanix, yeah, that's where it went from there.
I'm reeling because this is so unusual and peculiar. I would hope that prior to him taking the stand, that his attorney alerted the court that he was having a problem here, and while he has a right to testify on his own behalf, as his attorney, you're advising him not to, yet he's doing that, and put that on the record to say, and I think the prosecutor would want that on the record to save an appeal down the road, because this is just unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, from here he goes on to basically blame a probation officer for the death of the victim. It gets worse and worse and worse. Let's listen to it. And that is the beginning of the blaming of the probation officer for a murder which this defendant admitted on the stand that he committed. Attorney Roger Foley, West Palm Beach, Florida. You're down there in Florida. This guy's up on the stand. He's facing a possible death sentence. Is this what he should be doing up there, blaming his probation officer?
Absolutely. And I'm sure, Aaron, that his defense team told him more than likely not to take the stand, just like your guest said. He's rogue. He's blaming other people. It's not going to help him at all in his case.
Mike Korobanix, so what's going on? Should we take this thing with the probation officer at face value here, or is that just complete hogwash that the probation officer got in his way, got in meddled with his ability to basically earn a living and have a safe place to stay? Or is this just something he's making up?
This is something he's making up, and I hope that the prosecutor is able to clear this up, because there's a big difference between the federal release, being released on federal pretrial services. In fact, before I came to the studio today, I was working on what they call a bail package. And judges don't release you until they have a thorough investigation from pretrial services. And someone like this, if he's out, just by his mere demeanor, they're pretty much going to monitor him everywhere he goes. So he wouldn't be able to go anywhere or get employment until it was approved by the court.
Norman, you're shaking your head in complete agreement here.
Yeah, I mean, when you're released post-conviction in the federal system, usually you're in a halfway house for a while. And the thing that sounds kind of funny to me is the only parolees and probationers that have a problem with their probation officers getting them kicked out of a residence or taken away from a job are sex offenders, because there's so many rules as to how far away you have to live from a school and things like that. So the issue of residency becomes very dicey for sex offenders. So to hear him talk, I kind of wonder, what was the crime?
Yeah, now I want to know what his federal thing was, because he got up there and admitted, oh yeah, I was convicted of 6 felonies and I was in federal custody here. So there is some additional research, but I wonder if your suspicion is correct here. Look, we're going to take a break here on the Law and Crime Network. We're going to be back with more analysis of this testimony. Is it brilliant? Is it crazy? Is it somewhere in the middle? We're talking about the Scott Nelson case in Florida, where that defendant took the stand earlier today. We will break it all down after this. Okay, so he was going to shoot and kill his probation and parole officer, but instead he stabs Jennifer Fulford after duct taping her face, her ankles, zip tying her hands behind her back, and then stabs her in the heart. Roger Foley, attorney, West Palm Beach, Florida. Is this the sort of testimony that if you're the defense attorney sitting in the courtroom, that you are just slinking down in your chair, watching
Absolutely.
the train wreck and not really knowing what else you can do?
There's not much you can do, Aaron, because every defendant, it's their choice whether or not to take the stand. And you can advise them against it. You can make a record and tell the court that you advised your client against it, but it's their choice. And if they choose to get up there, that's really all you can do is slink down and kind of cover your head and look at your notes, because it is a runaway train wreck, as you said.
We had a couple of objections there, and look, the defense was doing the best that defense could with the worst losing hand of cards I've ever seen in my life. Mike Korobanik's, I don't know if I've ever quite seen the speechless look on your face that I saw while you were listening to that testimony.
It was almost, if you saw this in a movie, you'd say, we've talked about it, this can never happen. What I would be doing right now, if I was a defense counsel, I'd be calling my malpractice carrier and say, tune into Law and Crime, watch this testimony, because I'm telling you the truth if this guy ever comes back at me.
Okay, Norman Williams.
Cuckoo.
Okay, that's your response to it. I'm trying to think of a way to put this, but collateral damage. I mean,
No,
come on. I mean,
it's
this is
amazing.
just.
It's amazing. Collateral damage. My favorite was, funny you should mention that. By the way, I have an AK-47 in the house, and I was going to kill this guy, but God was looking out for him. What? So God picks and chooses now? Looks over this guy, but not poor Miss Fulford? I mean, look, like everybody has said, at this point, I would be sitting straight up in my chair and trying to smile and not look like the ship is sinking, which is it's hard to do.
Basically what's happening. Let's continue on with more of this cross-examination now from Scott Nelson. You got to be kidding me. My needs, it's all about him. It's all about what he needs. Look, he's the one who admits he bound this poor woman, Jennifer Fulford. He admits stabbing her in the back, in the heart. His DNA is on items all over her car. Her blood's on a knife found not far from the scene. Roger Foley, attorney from West Palm Beach, Florida. Is this a game to this guy? What's going on here?
I do think it's a game to him. He's obviously given a full confession. What's the purpose of a trial if he's simply going to take the stand, not really in his own defense? He's admitting to every single element, and he's showing the aggravated factors that would cause a jury to more than likely give him the death sentence. So is it a game to him? I don't know. Obviously, there's something wrong with this guy, but obviously you said he's intelligent. Some of his crimes in his background show a different level of sophistication. But this is a random person for no reason. $300, a home invasion robbery for someone he doesn't know for $300, and he stabs a woman. I mean, it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. You look at him, he's dressed well, he speaks well. You would never think that this man is looming through society. You can picture rap songs. You can picture, I mean, I'm not trying to make this guy famous, but his actions are horrific. You think about serial killers of the past. What else has he done? Has he killed anybody else?
I mean, one has to, I mean, you're raising the questions here. Norman Williams, we sit here, and I'll sit here many times, as you well know, and I'll say, oh, this is a really strong case for the state. This is a really weak case for the state.
Right.
This is already a win for the state. We don't even have to sit and jockey this at this point.
Right, it's an overkill win. And this guy, yes, it seems like he should be more sophisticated than this. He's very high functioning, obviously. He has high IQ.
High IQ, that's what I'm thinking too.
He's a bank robber. Bank robbers tend to be very bright people. They understand human dynamics and a lot of things that the rest don't. It looks like he's done a fairly long stretch in federal prison, so he understands a lot about crime in the street and things like that. But there's definitely some level of psych disorder, not enough to make him not responsible of what he did, but he's really bright the way that people with some psych disorders tend to be sometimes. His affect is very flat, and it's just amazing how he's obviously a narcissist. Like, he's sitting on that stand accused of murder, and he's being snarky, and he's trying
it's
to
all
convince...
about me. The interrogators aren't doing enough
Right,
for me. That's
quid
not
pro
their
quo.
job.
Right,
Exactly.
we have a contract. And you tell me you're going to give me pizza, either you give me pizza or I'm going to feed you crap. This guy's my favorite.
a natural reaction from someone who is, look, you are glad he is not your client. I could read both of your minds.
I'm glad he's not my neighbor.
That too.
He could be my client.
Aren't we all? Okay, we need to take a break here on the Law and Crime Network. We're going to be back with more about a losing ploy by the defense to try to say this testimony proves he was insane. That's when we return with more on the Scott Nelson case. Okay, this is just chilling. This is chilling on top of disturbing. Attorney Roger Foley, West Palm Beach, Florida. So we had this phone call where the friend said, I was told not to come over. There was a panic. And then the supposition is that what he described was going on was actually what was going on either during that phone call or around that time. Maybe he was right in front of her when she was on the phone and was afraid to say something about it.
That's what it sounds like to me, Aaron. It sounds like that Jennifer saved this woman's life. Miss Grimm saved her life by telling her, do not come over, and made up some excuse that the child was sick and she needed to run to the school. I mean, this guy's the Freddy Krueger of Orlando. He talks about being homeless in the streets. I mean, this is the guy, like your guest said, like, I don't want him to be my neighbor. I don't want him to live in my town. I live in Florida. Just to think that this guy's here committing crimes and has no value on life, it's just scary and it's chilling.
Okay, Mike Korobanix, we were talking about this a second ago. I want to get it on the record for our viewers. If you're the defense attorney, what are you doing attached to this testimony? How do you handle this?
Well, you're preparing him every time you go see him. I'm sure, I would hope, this guy's incarcerated while he's awaiting trial. So every time you go into the jail, you're keeping copious notes of that interview, what you're advising him, and you're asking him to sign off, so there's no miscommunication later on. I mean, this I think sometimes we laugh here at it because being all experienced attorneys here, we know the tension and the stress that something like this causes. And it's a guy like this is scary, and I commend his defense attorneys because we do take an oath that we defend whoever needs the defense. And for what they're doing in this case, which seems like an impossible situation, I commend them because that's really living up to your oath. But you want to make sure every time you meet with this guy, because we were talking, Norman and you, Aaron and I were talking about, this guy has, not only is he narcissistic, but he's got that complex where he's got to be the smartest guy in the room, even if it's to his detriment. When he's talking about, you've got my confession, you look stressed, the hand to the face, all these things are showing, even if it hurts him, he's got to have the appearance that he's in control. So that's my little soapbox as to defense
exactly. And as the
attorneys.
attorney, you just have to make sure that you're doing your job so that if the appeals court comes after you, you can say, my representation was as effective as I could make it. I don't control the client. I'm not inside the client's head. Okay, that's just chilling. Roger Foley, attorney, you're in Florida. He gets off the train just because you happen to be at the end of the train line.
It's just scary. Last night I was in a studio with a friend making a song. A friend of mine's a rapper, and I was telling him about this case, and he's like, unbelievable, because again, you have a wolf in sheep's clothing. He says that he gave up because he was hungry. So the police are going to feed him, and then because the police weren't on his side, didn't feed him pizza, he just told them whatever. I mean, this guy is a psychopath, and he's signing his own death warrant right now.
Sitting in the law library for hours while he's in prison. Mike Korobanix, the defense got up there after this testimony and said, this is proof this guy is insane. We want to be able to get an insanity instruction in here. We want the insanity defense. And the judge said, no. I think that legally that's probably a good ruling, but there's something going on here.
Well, I think the defense got on the wrong train with that insanity defense. This guy is so calculating. He's giving initials for task force. He's saying, I know how they work, and he does. I mean, the only thing I think, if I'm the prosecution in this case, I maybe call in his supervised release officer and ask him what was going on there. And I think you'd see this gentleman lose all his calmness, his collectedness, and his coolness, and probably act in accord with the way he acted on that brutal murder.
He would potentially flip out in court. We're going to listen to a little bit more of these so-called final thoughts from the defendant. Attorney Roger Foley, let's try to break this down and see if we can make some sense of it. What's going on here?
He's just making excuses, Aaron. He's blaming the system. Yes, it's not a perfect system, but the system is in place. Prisons are in place for people like him that have no respect for authority, no respect for human life. He hasn't helped. He's basically said, they turned me into an animal, so I'm going to be an animal. I'm mad at my probation officer, so I'm going to kill this innocent lady who's an assistant, who's a nanny. I'm going to kill her for nothing, for $300.
Exactly. Roger Foley, I know you need to run. Thanks for being with us on the Law and Crime Network.
Thank you, Aaron. Good to see you.
Let's turn to the rest of the panel. You guys are going to be with me for at least an hour and a half here. I'm thinking the same thing that Roger said. You know, the defendant's saying, oh, you know, people drive past the prisons and they just shudder. No kidding, because people like you tend to be inside them.
Right, and break out the tiny violin, you know? Like, the thing that's interesting about his description of jail sounds like state prison, but not federal prison to me. You know, the roaches, the bad cells, that's state. That's on the state side, not the federal side. But he's definitely making excuses. Like, he's just trying to tell the world that, look, I've done what I've done, but I couldn't help myself. And the thing that gets me is that whole discussion about knocking on someone's door. A guy that's done a quarter in federal prison?
Yeah, I mean,
crazy.
We're going to continue this discussion, folks, when we come back on the flip side of this break here on Law and Crime. We're talking about Scott Nelson's testimony.